Hello, guys. David Vos here. What's a beautiful day here in paradise on Red Mesa, New Mexico, out here in the high chaparral. But the sun's just coming out, and the dogs are out there laying in the sun, and the chickens are even liking that beautiful sunshine as it comes down. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I'm having a wonderful day, and friends, I've been meaning to. I think I put this picture in one of my videos or two of them. But I never said anything about it. I forgot to talk about this. I've been wanting to talk about this. You see all these things. You'll see a picture, and everybody will go like, oh. And most people would look at the picture and get the inference. Like, I don't know what that is. I immediately think of some kind of telephone, ancient kind of telephone pole or something. I know there were telegraph wires that looked something like that, but not like that. They were different, not to a point like that. None of them, I don't know of any of them that ever came to a point. That looks more like an antenna. And plus, that thing's got weird little dots on it, like insulators or something. Could be, but I don't see any wires, like cables. Now, somebody said that, well, the picture's old and blurry, you wouldn't be able to see the wires. Okay, granted. But then if you look inside the A-frame, on the bottom side of the A-frame, there's more back and forths. And also, you know what I'm saying? Like there's another antenna, like it looks like a TV antenna above that woman's umbrella. And so it's either another one and they're in a row, which might be likely, or it's some other bunch of wires underneath that thing. And I don't see another one other than what that one above the umbrella, if that's one. That's the only other one I see. So it could just be an antenna and not poles. But I do on the right see there are some poles, and you can see them in succession, 1, 2, 3, and those look like lamp poles. So they're also pretty tall poles. If they're electrical, you throw a switch. Boom, they come on. If they're gas, which they could be, I know some of these ancient cities had gas all over the city, and they had these little lamps that could be switched on. There was probably a flint or something that sparked it. And I don't know, some guy that was the guy in the bell tower or something, he's up there watching for it to turn dark and then he flips the switch. No, yeah, I think those were probably gas lamps, but still quite sophisticated, just because we prefer some other resource we call air now, or thin air, like electricity, this invisible stuff, and we get more power out of it. So we got a little bit more power than we did then. But now if you look up onto the right side of that building, the big building on the right side, there seems to be antennas up there. Or you might say, well, now, Dave, why would there be any antennas? That's probably just, well, it don't look like decoration. Maybe it's a steeple, and that's a church. Well, do they got two steeples on one end of, the church? I don't know. No, it don't look like a steeple. And in fact, it's funny because all the buildings seem to have steeples. Even that big dome in the back's got quite a nifty little steeple there. And then I see some other steeples on the left of the crazy thing we're talking about, the antennae. On the left of the antennae, there's little antennas in the background. On the right, there is too. So I was looking at all of this, and I noticed, well, what year do you think this is? Umbrellas? I mean, I think that was kind of like, born free as the wind blows, as free as the grass grows. Born free, born free. That's right. I did it. That was me singing the song and making a fool out of myself. Well, you gotta make a fool out of yourself once in a while so they don't get a chance to make a fool out of you. I just made that up. Well, no. Okay. On this picture, I'm looking at the picture and I'm not seeing any cars. I see horse and buggy. Now, I'm not that knowledgeable on what people wore in the 1880s necessarily. I think the reason I started singing that song is I was thinking of Julie Andrews, in the Swiss Alps dancing around singing, but I think I may have gotten the wrong song, but, that's my memory these days. But I don't know when umbrellas were really big, the biggest. But I don't think it would have been likely after World War I. I mean, in the 1920s, they were doing the Charleston and the ha-cha-cha. Marilyn Monroe wasn't long after that, and she's running around with the T-top, cutting her hair short and stuff. Things went fast. I mean, this buggy and horse and that dark Gothic style and the black umbrella, it looks like Julie Andrews and Dick Van Dyke. Looks like Mary Poppins, which I guess would be in England or Britain somewhere. And that city looks pretty dirty, old, and decrepitated. It just doesn't look right. It doesn't look like the 20th century at all to me. It looks like the 18th century. And it could be as far back as the 1830s or 40s or something. But I'm just guessing. I have no idea. I don't think there were telegraph lines back then, but like I said, this could be further up, closer to the 20th century. So I don't know. This woman doesn't look very liberal. She's kind of dressed to the hilt, and she's wearing black. And I don't know if that's just an accident when the guy snapped it. We've got to answer the question is, what is that space alien antennae? But then we also have to ask the question, okay, what you mean there was a time when the cities looked like shit and dirty? I mean, I know it's a photograph and it's old, but it don't look clean. It looks like a filthy dirt. Like, obviously there's no pavement. Don't see any railways. It's not a rail car. That could have been the 1900s, even the the late 1800s. It was a rail car. They had electric cars for a while. But what city's got a dome like that on the hill and has women running around dressed with this long, dark dress, which looks to me English? If that's somewhere in England, that's a while ago. It's a while ago. It's when they first was taking pictures, when they had this big, huge apron. They threw it over the whole thing, this black, dark canvas, and they got under it and pulled the plug and it went poof, and the light flashed, and it made a outline of what you were seeing in the negative, and then they painted the rest in. So while they were technically photographs, because it was it's the same principle with the negative, but it was so primitive that all you got was really just an outline. It's like fill in the lines, like in a color book. And they couldn't fill in clouds. That was too much. But that's why some of those pictures you'll see black and white. They didn't try to put them into color until a little bit later. People were like, wait, can't you just put some color in there if you're painting this? So they found a way to kind of put color on there that looked more real than not real. Like, because it's not going to look like real color. We're not that advanced. It's going to be like some red, some green, some blue, and see what happens. And, I don't know. They had to progress to get the colors in. Because at first, they literally, I think, just painted it in some way. But then later on, they were able to get a machine to read the fluctuations of the shadows and determine if it was a gray shadow or a black or a white shadow. And it was gray, was it leaning towards the black or was it leaning towards the light? It was a little bit darker, then you would probably say it was blue. Because they know which is the darkest color, and it's blue, which goes into purple. But the red is on the other end. Blue is cold and red is hot. So they used this sort of math to know what the color would be. It didn't take picture of color, but it took some sort of a gradient, white to black. And if you were in this gradient or this range, it was blue. If it was in this range, it was red. And then as they got more advanced, they could go lighter red, darker red. Then it got to where it was more colors, more. Today we've got all these different pixels. It's more pixelated than reality. It's more sharp. And I think part of the reason they want to do that, because we don't care if it's that sharp. But when you pull or like blowing it up, then it starts getting blurry. The pixels start becoming less. So if they have way more pixels in the camera than where normal would be, then they can fool you into thinking that they have a better camera. There's better technology because of this little thing here, although it's not perfect. But what it does is it just takes the picture as you snap it. It already takes the picture further away than it looks further away than what it is in reality. So that if you wanted to bring it in with zooming in, and they wanted to say they could zoom it in 20 times more than the other zoomer on the last camera, could have it 20 times sharper. They're not really doing it. They're only zooming it in, say, 10 degrees, but it looks 50 degrees more because of the fact that you had so many thousands of little pixels that when you zoom it that far, it's still got a lot of pixels, almost like reality. So it gives them the ability to focus and zoom further, which also is an interesting thought, because if they have to do that, which is we could prove, and we have basically done that by explaining it in depth there. This is why they do it. It's why a lot of your cameras, you take a picture or you're looking through the video camera and the mountains look way over there and they're not that far. And everybody knows that. And they're like, why? Can't they get it accurate? Well, they don't want it accurate. They know you're going to blow it up and you're going to go, wow, this thing zooms in so well. So it's just to compete with competitors and have a better camera, or make it look like, or theoretically it can go so many more times, zoom or whatever. So it's worth more and they get all the credit. In reality, and in fact, it is helpful in seeing things at greater distances. So it is a technology, and it is zooming it in, but in a way that's different than it used to. So if that is true, that they've got to take a picture of something further away to make us think they can zoom it in further, they're doing a trick on us, then how do they expect us to believe that they can take pictures of stars that we can't see with our eyes and zoom them in enough to where we can see anything about their solar system, or if that's what it is, whether there's planets and water on the planet or anything, how big the planet, what it's made out of, what kind of hydrogen, uranium explosions is going on, the red, big, giant, small tortoise, nova, whatever they're looking at. They know exactly what it is. Oh, this is not a star, that's a galaxy, and it's Andromeda. Right? And these stars, they don't go around very fast. They call those planets. So they're lying about everything, and this proves that they don't have the ability to zoom. If they had that technology to make those kind of zooms, they would put it in the camera, but they had to cheat. So anyway, I don't know when this was, but I get the gut feeling this was before World War I. I don't think this looks like after World War I, because there would be a car probably. So if this is the late 1800s, I don't think that there would be such a antenna-looking device, UFO agent from the stars planted in our street, but there it is. Now, if that was after 1914, or after 1920, then I would have no problem saying that might be some kind of a crazy telegraph pole. But seeing the gas lamps, I know this is in the 1800s because that's when they had the gas lamps. Well, they might have had gas lamps in some of the cities, even after World War I. There might have been cities that just felt it was convenient and they looked nice and aesthetic. Gas lamps were first used, I think, in Paris around 1820. So, 100 years before. But they started using electric lights in the 1800s too, but late 1800s. So, I think Thomas Edison first started there in Manhattan in New York. And they had electric lights for New York, but then other cities followed suit, Baltimore and so forth and on down the line. But there were a lot of towns that didn't have electric lights probably for another 10 years or so. I mean, I don't know. So those lamps could be, if they're gas, they could be much older. And not all the cities had electricity until later on. The big cities would have their electrical streets and the lights on and stuff like that after World War I. But gas lamps were first. So that picture has gas lamps. It looks before the time of a telegraph line. And that telegraph line, if that's what it is, doesn't look much like a telegraph line. And I don't know what building that is or what town that is, but like I said, it looks really dirty. And people look like they only know, that does look like the 1800s. I really think like 1850. I could see that being like London or something. But don't know what that pole is. It certainly looks like some kind of electric pole. But it does also look a bit like an antenna. But it doesn't look like any electric poles or telegraph lines that I've ever seen. They never go to a point like that. So I asked AI, when did cars first start running around in cities. And this is not what came up. And I tried to get it back again, but actually they've given me 3 different versions. So it's probably just innocent. But the other one said that they started in the early 1900s. Now they're going back to 1890. And this got me thinking about the idea that they can read your mind or something. Because if they switched that answer for any political reason, it would have to have been because they were reading my mind or something. Because they knew what I was going to do with this information by making a video. I don't know. I don't think that's it. I think it's an innocent little thing that happened. But it did remind me of a lot of things that are happening that I do think is them reading your mind. I do believe they have direct interface with our brains when we're looking at these phones. And this is probably what's powering AI. So that picture, in my opinion, is probably from the 1800s. That's why I asked this question. They say cars started appearing in cities, not yet as primary mode of transport, from the late 1890s, becoming more common in the early 1910s. So, from 1910 on, you might see a car or two in the road, not primarily horses. But, you know, that got me wondering if they were maybe reading my mind. Now, this is it's happened quite a few times. When things happen, you think they're happening sometimes, but you are in a mode of doubt. You're not really thinking it's happening. You're just noticing something and you have this quick question in your mind. Oh, I've had that a lot of times, but it's hard to remember how many times. But then when I started trying to keep track of it, it's been only like a couple of times I've had this happen. Where where I can definitely remember asking, I don't remember even what question probably, but I did, remember thinking, I got to see if this is just a coincidence or if this is, because it seems like it's been happening. And it happened just now. I just asked AI when cars started going down the streets in a city. About what year would you start seeing cars in the city streets? And you'll just have to trust me, unless I can find a way to have them get it back for me. Maybe they have several answers that they can throw at you. And if you ask more than once, they'll throw you a different answer. I don't know. That's possible. Has nothing to do with them trying to lie to me. Maybe it's just that they, I'm telling you, yesterday, if I can think of what it was, I think it was I was thinking, it just popped into my head. Maybe I saw a commercial or I was watching something where they mentioned it on a talk show or something. But I remember thinking I would like to try one of these chicken sandwiches from Chick-fil-A. I've only walked into a Chick-fil-A once. I don't think maybe I was going through to go to a gas station or something, but I've never eaten there. But I'm hearing that people like those chicken sandwiches almost as much as like a Big Mac or whatever, everybody's going to them. So I just was thinking about them and I thought, well, the next time I go into town, I'll see if there's a Chick-fil-A in Gallup, which is 65 miles from me north. And I go in maybe once a month or something. And I thought, well, maybe when I go in next time, I'll see if I can get one of those sandwiches. And then I forgot about it. But I didn't say anything. I was just thinking this dialogue to myself. And I think it was like 2 or 3 days later, and I started getting Chick-fil-A commercials all the time. I mean, they just kept popping up, Chick-fil-A, Chick-fil-A. And I thought about it. Did I type Chick-fil-A in? No, I know I didn't. I only had that one thought about, I think I'll try one. And that's it. And I didn't say anything out loud. As far as I can remember, I didn't say Chick-fil-A. Of course, if they've got a camera on me, my phone's a camera, maybe they could, if I whispered it, like when I was thinking it to myself, maybe there's other ways. But I really believe that they've got radio waves going into our mind and they're reading these radio waves. But this has happened. It happened also with Carl's Jr. I think it was like almost 2 years ago when I first came here. Right by Walmart, there's a Carl's Jr. And I remember going by there and looking and thinking, oh, Carl's Jr. I hadn't seen one for a long time from when I was in California years ago. And I used to like their hamburgers. And I just remember thinking, oh, there's a Carl's Jr. And this was like about a year ago. And then immediately I got home and I had Carl's Jr. commercials nonstop. Well, that one I figured out. They didn't read my mind. They just probably knew my GPS, where I was. And they thought, well, he went by. I passed by one and I saw it. And they're hearing me talk about Carl's Jr., somebody talking in the background. Somehow the computer can weed all this static out and figure out where I'm at. Or they're reading my mind. Now, that wasn't the big one. Like I say, this one was big. Some of these is going to be, you're listening to me. Some of you had the experience and you think, yeah, I agree completely. And others have never noticed this experience, probably just thinking that I'm making it up. I'm just, what's the word? Just gullible and I'm just silly to believe in this kind of a conspiracy. But it's happening in ways that if you were in my body and knowing what's going on and seeing what they're doing and exactly how I'm seeing it, I think you would come to the conclusion there's no way that something like that could happen more than once in your lifetime, that coincidence, where you're, like you might have had an experience in your life where you're walking down the road and you say squirrel just out of nowhere, and boom, you take one step and an acorn falls out of heaven and hits you in the head. But you think, dang, where's these acorns coming from? And you look up in a tree and you see a squirrel. That maybe in somebody's lifetime could happen 2 or 3 different times. Of course, I don't believe those were coincidences either. I think that we are manifesting all this world around us. That's just scientifically a fact. I'm not going to go into that today and prove it, but we're manifesting all these little things. There's coincidences happening, like in your dream, you think of something and boom, there it is. You got fears and anxiety. You're going to have monsters and, we're creating this world. So, but, this is not about the world that we're making. This is about a machine that is reacting in such a way that I've come to the point where I completely believe that they're reading your mind. So the one I just experienced was, I asked this, when did cars begin to go around in cities? And they said cars began driving in cities, though initially as novelties from the late 1890s. Okay. The one they gave me before, they said the word early 1900s. Now, why would they not want me to have that one? Because I'm trying to go back to it and I can't find it again. Maybe they don't want that in writing, early 1900s. Maybe they want to push it back a few years, like into the 1800s. So they just like 1890, right? That's better than an early 1900s. So just because they were like, we're letting out the information, like there's information could be it could be exaggerated a little bit, one way or the other, and still you might think it's accurate. Accurate information, but we can skew it so that you'll think one thing or another. So if you say, oh, from the early 1900s, that sounds like, man, that's recent. So anything in the 1800s, no, cannot be a car. But they wanted you to know that there were cars before 1900, but they were only novelties. So it really wasn't the answer, it wasn't the answer to my question, which was, when did they start moving around on the streets, and pushing out the horse and buggy? And they originally said early 1900s. And I know that's true. It's after World War I that we invented cars because of the war. And that was 1914. The war wasn't over until 1918 or something. I mean, there may have been a few people that could purchase Jeeps and stuff, but, it wasn't like there was all these car industries and stuff. They just started making cars in World War I. So if you were to see, and besides, beneath it, there was another whole thing that they had written that I wanted to read to you, but it's gone now. So my initial thought when I saw this picture on the Facebook, I think is where I got it. I thought, wow, this is interesting. What is this? And then on the other side of my brain, I'm like, well, so what? It might not be an antenna. It might be something else. I mean, maybe it looks like a telephone pole. But okay, how long ago did they have telephone poles? And I started thinking about this, and it also dawned on me in the process that this kind of thing is all we got when it comes to a lot of these conspiracies. Some picture or an idea that pops up. We don't have answers for it. So I thought, okay, now I'm feeling guilty. I ain't got no proof. This is probably in the early 1900s, and there's cars somewhere just not in the picture. But then I looked at a lot of pictures, and I never seen any telegraph lines like that. They called them telegraph lines, and they weren't really like phones. I mean, you could send a quick message. And they had them quite, back in the day, but they didn't look like that. And I think this picture is probably before that time. I think it's in the 1800s sometime. I'm just going to guess about 1850. I mean, that looks like Queen Elizabeth wear, and even the horse and the carriage looks like Queen Elizabeth or maybe Germany or something. Or Austria. I don't know. I suppose I don't have a clue where it is. But my point is that we get these feelings like, oh no, and not one person goes out and says, okay, let's just take one of these photos that we've got. We don't have to go through all of them. Just please, at least one, and say, okay, let's identify what city this is. I couldn't identify it. If somebody can, would you please identify the city for me and explain to me why you know? I mean, obviously, that building in the background is probably something we should recognize. But I'm not completely certain what it is. And obviously, none of us know for sure if they made telegraph lines into A-frames. Nobody knows what city it is, so we can't even tell if they had gas lamps, what year that might be, because we don't know what city it is. And we don't see cars, but there could be cars. And who wore that kind of dark dress and those buildings that you see? I mean, somebody out there might know kind of where this might be. I'd appreciate it if you'd let me know. And if anybody's ever seen a telegraph line like that one, let me know. I mean, in pictures. And send me the pictures, please, if you could. As many, if you know where any of these pictures might be that would explain or explanations, what that is, I would love to have it. So I want to get to the bottom of when was this. I think we should be able to do that. I couldn't do it on my own, but I'm coming up with criteria and I'm handing it on to you. I'd like for somebody out there to look into these criteria, if that's what we're going to call them, each and every one I pointed out, and see if we can identify the date, time, whether or not they had ever made telegraph lines looking like that, what the attire of that woman might implicate, and the buildings and that Capitol looking thing in the background. The type of photograph may give us the date of when it was snapped. Any information would be helpful. I want to point out something a revelation that I've been having, that one of the reasons we're not happy, a lot of people are a little depressed, and we don't know how to get out of this depression. And we know about positive thinking. Thank you very much. But there might be tricks. But the one thing I know that helps better than tricks, I mean, I'm not saying you should trick anything or anyone or yourself, but I'm saying methods. Like I know people take vitamin C in order to overcome caffeine or nicotine addictions. Okay, it helps get your body rid of the nicotine. It's not a trick, it's wisdom. But experience is what you need to learn how to focus and keep your mind and not be depressed. But knowledge is what's going to lead to that. So when you know that there's nobody behind the door, no boogeyman, then you don't have any more fear. And so it's knowledge, really, ultimately, we've got to acquire. But I want to say that the world we're living in makes us depressed for one thing: we're not eating right. You've got to eat right. It really is important. Think about what cannabis does to the way you feel. Well, other foods do that too. Sugar makes you hyper, and caffeine and nicotine and whatever. And everything's a drug. But you need it balanced. You need to eat vegetables. We're not eating enough of that. We don't want to eat wild animals that we butcher and murder if we want that peace, if we want to live as the Sikhs do in the East, where they say they don't want to step on a bug. It's unnecessary. And they sacrifice their lives walking around real carefully for these little bugs. I don't happen to believe in that. But the point is they're probably aware that it wouldn't be a sin to step on a bug. But they're practicing it only because they want to get out of this concept where everything's got to go, 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 go. So sometimes in order to train ourselves to slow down, we do have to do extreme things. Extreme things. Like when you're in a room on fire, you stop, drop, and roll. In other words, there's a method. You've got to know what the plan is. And some things are serious enough that we need to pay attention. And so sometimes we have to stop and not be so busy and we need to just go back into the world of Mother Nature and spend time alone, collecting our thoughts and balancing them. But I wanted to point this out before I leave. If all of those things are being done, and you need to do all of those things to heal your mind, your emotions, and your body, if you still feel unhappy, it could be completely something else. If somebody's threatening you, harassing you, literally torturing you mentally, physically, or any other way, you are expected to feel pain and discomfort. The way out of that and to heal from that then is to remove yourself from that. Now, if you're in a family situation where you're having problems, and marital problems or financial or whatever, this is going to cause confusion and depression. And the only way to never have those problems is to follow the one truth and the only truth that very few human beings will ever do. This is only for the elect. They must be no part of the world. You can walk that razor's edge. We have to be alive. Sometimes if we're hungry, we have to go to the store to get something to eat if we don't have anything else. But we need to start preparing ourselves so that we don't have to go to the store anymore. We need to find Mother Nature. We need to have land. And here's the last thing I'll say. If you're unhappy because, and you say, well, I'm so unhappy that it's depressing me and I can't even get any work done. Debilitating. That's the problem then. Go and do your work, clean up, clean the house, organize everything, and then sit down with a positive mind and ask yourself, what could I make out of this situation? And start dreaming, putting your mind on a positive note, believing in yourself. And to believe in yourself, you've got to show yourself that you're capable. And that means you've got to not fall apart. So get yourself dressed and expect something great. But don't just sit around hoping. Hope is the start of it. Then we got to trust and have faith in ourselves and our fellow man and the Lord. Because the Lord's already promised us that if we believe, anything can happen. But if we're depressed, we're probably not believing. So we got to believe, and we've got to have proof that we're believing. Believers don't sit around and become a hoarder, or just let things slip and you got everything out of order in your life, right? You haven't done your gardening. You haven't accomplished the things that you wanted to do. You haven't gone on the walk you said you were going to go on with the kids and stuff. So you don't feel good because you're falling behind. When you think you're falling behind, it's going to make you feel sad. And that's normal. So, yes, sometimes it can be simply that we have lost hope in ourselves and belief in ourselves. And in order to do that, we've got to start showing ourselves. There is some kind of works here, James said. James in the Bible said that we need to have the works of grace in our life. So if we know that the Lord loves us and there's nothing we can do to ever get, estranged from his love, and we know that we love him and we want to love others and forgive everyone, then we know that our life is eternal and forever. And we feel that we're giving to others and we're getting back from them. So we also need the works of faith. So if you have faith, show me your faith by your works. So if you have faith, you're going to have works. Faith is like invisible. Nobody knows if you've got faith. Only you know if you believe. But what is apparent is the fruit from that tree will tell you what the tree is. Your works, what you do, not the works of law. You don't earn salvation by getting brownie points or doing ceremonies or rituals or worshiping in that mountain or in this mountain, right? Moses brought the law. Fine. But I bring the truth, Jesus said. So we've got to have evidence that we love. You can't be hitting people and hurting people and yelling at people and say, well, I love people. You can't a lot of you Christians don't understand, you say you're a Christian, but you can't even be a Christian if you don't have love. That's the main thing you need. That's what we follow is love. And if you're a Christian and you're on your way to church or anywhere, to work, anywhere, and you see someone along the road with a flat tire or down and out, they're starving, homeless, whatever, and you pass by, then you do not have works of love, works of charity, works of faith. And these are the kind of works that James says we must have. Abraham was saved by grace, yes, but the fact that he was saved is proved by the fact that he had works showing, evidence showing that he believed. That's what's important. We need to believe. Not because there's a big, mean, angry, bearded man in the sky that demands that you worship him. No, that's not it. It's not that at all. You can blaspheme the Father. You can blaspheme the Son. Jesus. You can blaspheme Jesus. He'll forgive you. The Father will forgive you. But you cannot blaspheme the Spirit and be forgiven. The Spirit is mind. It's your own being. If you go against your own, you're divine, right up there with Jesus, the divine Spirit, the divine mother that was hovering over the waters in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. And Sophia was the master architect of the universe with the Father. And Jesus was there with him. And that divine mother is her desire. Her love is with us, as it says in Proverbs. Sophia's love was with the sons of men. Her affection, her desire. That's all she thought about, all she cares about. And that's why Jesus said, I'm going to send you the Holy Spirit. And she will teach you all things you need to know. And she will do it in the hour that you need to know it. You got to have absolute trust and faith. But human beings need to be well fed, well slept and rested. You need sunshine. You need exercise. You need to be free and without torture. And sometimes the only thing you can do is get out of this world. Just let it go. The less you have, the better you will feel. Be free like a bird. And all these anxieties will just become lifted off of you. Spend your life like that Eastern monk, practicing love. Organizing, thinking, planning, and believing. Start living on that and see what the results are. I'm going to go ahead and go. Hope you have a wonderful evening. His grace and His peace will be with you. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.